Hello again, everybody. Glitch Reaper here. I'm back for some more Lycanites equipment combos, and I did decide to go ahead and just try to uh, beef up my Phalanx design a little bit. So this is Phalanx 2.0. Has a bit more reach and a bit more damage for one thing, and in more than one way. So we'll get on that. It will lack the heal, but it's partially because that part had a little less reach, and I just was having a hard time hitting the Naga with it. So I'm also going to have a rematch with the Naga with this particular weapon. So we'll see how that goes later on. Also, this is the introduction of me using a Bewitchment altar to show it off a bit. And I can see it looks a little better on the edge that way than on the edge this way. Can it be placed sideways? Oh, it can be placed sideways. Okay. That's nice to know. And whenever you punch in creative, by the way, it actually still comes back to you. It looks better hanging a little off the edge to me, because it kind of buries the head part a bit into the altar. So far the champion of how to show off your modded Lycanite weapon has been probably right here. That still seems to be the king of it looks good in that. So still experimenting with the aesthetics of that part. By the way, I'm still not entirely sure if I've got a favorite yet in terms of like technical design for them, you know, in terms of exactly what the combo can do. Although in terms of ones that I kind of have I guess you could say a sentimental spot for, there's a few. I really liked my Geoknocker design since it recreated Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. I really like Legion Slayer as it was kind of themed a bit after Embercleave from Magic the Gathering, and Life Piercer for a similar reason with the Shadow Spear. And I'm also kind of attached to Theurge's Wood, partially because it was my first design that I made in survival, but for kind of some other reasons. But I'm wondering if in the future I could do a better design based on something that it just kind of lined up with, but at the same time I know that it could be a little bit better. But I'll figure that part out over time as to whether or not I want to redesign it to make it more perfect. But for now, it's just another one that I just like because it was one of my firsts in terms of doing it in survival. But now we're going to go on to the redesign of Phalanx 2.0. You kind of already know what it was originally designed to do, and that's mainly to buff you up in terms of defense while being able to strike enemies, and preferably give you a little extra distance from them. Well, this one has a few traits slightly different from the previous, and one of that is a little bit more increased reach. So we'll see if we can do it with the classic Phalanx style. And as usual, I'll go over what you need for it, including kind of where you're going to be hunting around for the parts, and why they're contributing to the design, and things like that. So let's go over that part now. Remember, as usual, I'll also go over pretty much everything along the way and give it a little demonstration. This one is going to be heavily combat orientated, so remember that. It's not going to be a very... Well, again, you could use it to harvest blocks, especially in a line, but so far, if you're on the surface, that's not going to be as big of a deal because it harvests mostly hard blocks like stone, not soft things like soil, so yeah. Now, starting up, you'll be needing your base part being the Wendigo Antler, which you'll find in frosty environments, like snow-topped mountains and cold biomes like tundras, but especially you'll be finding Wendigos any time that you find a pool of icy ooze around, which can show up in all sorts of places. So you might want to be hanging around one of those oddly cool-colored pools to see if you can find one. And this does grant both a head and a pommel slot, in addition to slowing the target. Previously, with Phalanx 1.0, since slowness was in fact supposed to be part of the design, I had that due to a Sudaramu stinger. In this case, it's more based on the base part itself, which has an innate slowing effect. So, I'm kind of doing a bit of a trade-off there. In terms of a pommel, we'll be going with a Vespid Stinger, which you find Vespids usually in jungles, but there is an event that draws them to you if you have events enabled, and that's the event known as the Swarm. So, You can deal with a lot of Vespids that way, or you can go to a jungle. Either way, their stinger is what you're after. It adds the poison effect normally, but if you get to level 3, which I always finalize my designs on, then you'll also get the penetration effect, which means this thing will have a bit more zip. Please note that penetration has been nerfed a bit. It doesn't deal quite as much damage as it used to in terms of bonus damage, but it still gives it a little extra kick, so it's still important that way. It's just not quite as insane as it used to be. Uh, Now, as for a head part, we'll be using an Astaroth Claw, because we're still going with a pike, partially just because the theme of it being for a true Phalanx formation, and partially because it's a pretty good pike part. Astaroth are found pretty much in the Nether and the End. They do count as demons, so you'll be doing some demon slaying to get this. In addition to withering the target and just being a good spot to give yourself a pike slot, it also has the ability to shoot Devil Star charges on its secondary use. So whenever you're using the use button, not the attack button, you will be firing a lot of Devil Star shots, and it can do so in rapid succession. This is a rapid fire damage weapon, so you will be gatling them down pretty much if they're out of your main melee reach. But the melee reach is still kind of important here, because we're trying to figure out a design that can help keep an enemy at bay by doing some quick pokes. The ability to range them is kind of secondary in a way to this design, because it deals very heavy singular strikes, and it also deals them decently quickly. This thing will have a pretty good attack speed, although not the highest I've ever hit, so it won't be quite spammy. As for an actual pike part, we'll be needing a Geonox spear. Remember, Geonox pop out from things that are kind of like iron and gold and that drop themselves whenever you're mining them as an ore, not things that drop them as a separate item, like, oh, say, redstone and diamond. Those things will give you Vapula instead. Either way, while you're mining, you might wind up getting some parts, which may help you mine. This thing has a hefty amount of damage in and of itself, and that's just notable. It's just right there. It does act as a pickaxe for its harvest type, and that will also mean you'll be dealing bonus damage to Geonox and Vapula, because they're weak to pickaxes, so once you get this part, you'll be having an easier time getting more of them, and it'll also give you the resistance buff on impact with the enemy. So, and that might add, whenever it says that it does that resistance self thing, it means when you hit them in melee, you won't get that effect whenever you use the ranged attack, so you won't be getting that off the Devil Star shots. And now to assemble the weapon, do the classic renaming, and also to remind you that you'll be needing these kind of blocks to pull this off. You'll be needing the Lesser Equipment Forge at first, which is a crafting table and a wooden axe. You add an iron block to that to get the Greater Equipment Forge, and the final iteration requires a diamond block on the Greater Equipment Forge, and again, it will handle all the parts without any downgrading or anything to give you any problems, so it's really the only one you really need in the end, although it is the most expensive. So, it's something to strive for with that diamond block. Now, you also will need an equipment infuser to level everything up, and you'll pretty much get a lot of the charges now from getting rid of extra parts by crafting them into their charges, or just fighting the enemy that you got them from a lot. Usually. Again, there's one that's a little exception over there. But anyhow, it requires a Lesser Equipment Forge and to be surrounded with Lapis Lazuli in the crafting table. Please remember that is 8 Lapis Lazuli, not just 1. I just put that there as a visual reminder. I say that every time, but it's worth repeating. So, now I'm going to actually assemble it in the Master Equipment Forge. So we have our Wendigo Antler as our base part, our pommel being the Vespid Stinger, our head part being the Astaroth Claw, and there's certain things that their visuals are just very hard to see, like the Geonox Spear is very tricky to see whenever it's in the inventory, but that's okay. As long as you remember where you put it, then it's fine. Also remember, these things are diamond level-ish in terms of what they can do, so it's like having a diamond pickaxe, but better, because they're faster and they can mine anything a diamond pickaxe can, so these can rip through obsidian. So now I've officially renamed it as Phalanx 2.0. And as you can see, it is identical to the one that I already have. So, therefore, I have officially created the design I was leading into. Now, in terms of stats, this thing is a monster. It has 15 attack damage and an attack speed of 2. So this thing is going to hit like, well, it's going to hit like an atlatl. If you're not familiar with an atlatl is, ancient way of making a spear or javelin shot go really far, really fast. Absolutely absurd damage. So it's going to hit like that, but in melee. So, I mean, they think the atlatl is basically one of the biggest reasons why the mammoth went extinct. It was hunting parties using those things. Just remember, just because a weapon is primitive doesn't mean it's not super effective. Those things were really nasty. And this thing's going to be hitting a lot like that. Where did I do this fight before? Because I wanted to kind of... Oh, I think I did it over here. If he starts smashing a few blocks to get to me, that'll be fine. Okay. Yeah, this is where I had my fight with him before. Okay, so this is going to be the round 2 fight. Of me versus the Naga. Trying to do that. Oh, wow, I really do need to eat that battle burrito anyhow. Ah, there we go. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, you. Got a bit more reach this time. Got a range of 3 rather than 2. Will that change matter? Right into him. Hey, attention. Yeah, that hit a little easier. Still had to run up for him, but I hit him. Oh yeah, this is working a lot better. And he is getting extra damage from penetration. Whoa, lag miss. Lag miss. That was just random, but that was, in a way, sort of fair. He does move fast. Sometimes he gets a little laggy. Nailed him. Okay, yeah, I think that went a lot more smoothly with just a little extra range. Sometimes you do kind of have to min-max this for best use. And wow, he really wrecked those trees. And I think my Dimensional Pinchers design was probably about the max range I can get out of it. So, in terms of reach, I think I've already hit the peak there. For now, admittedly. There will be more parts coming, and they might have radically different stats. In fact, one may or may not wind up exceeding that that record. So I'm not sure about that. Like, I don't know if he said he has any specific plans just to do that. I wouldn't imagine he'd be attempting to do it just to have, like, the reachiest part ever. But I mean, you still have ranged attacks as backups, so that's not really too big of a stretch. It's just wouldn't seem like quite that crazy. I mean, I could see, like, if you get an exact combination of parts, maybe getting a range past 6, which I think was my record. But I just don't see, like, another part of just the right type making it, like, absurd. Like, I don't think I'm going to break 10. That would just be a little crazy. I mean, again, it would be good for the theme of Phalanx, but at the same time, it just seems like that would be excessive. Like, if you have, like, a 6-block reach like I hit before, then I'm going to be hitting that guy super easy. And that was over here. No, that's not right. That's not the one. Oh, this one. This one is Dimensional Pincers. And this is the one that, yeah, it has a range of 6. So that was insane. It's not quite as heavy hitting or fast, but its range is just nuts. And that's the record I hit before for range. This one has a range of only only 3, and it was dealing much better because of the massively enhanced damage. And that also shows just how good it is to have a pommel, because by being able to have a Vespid Stinger, I was able to push in a lot more damage using penetration, and that was after the nerf. So, Yeah, you could see that that was just a wrecking machine even after the penetration nerf. So it's still really good to use. It's just not quite as insane. I have no idea what I would have hit for if I'd hit like with absolute power with the old school penetration. So just a funny thought, but yeah, that was a good design. And so I hope that I also kind of answered a few questions before about kind of where I'm sitting on my favorites for now. But remember that more parts will be added, and there's also rebalancing that he might do along the way. So in terms of finding that perfect feel, uh, I'm still not absolutely sure yet. But I do have some that I do, for sentimental reasons, just really love anyhow. Like, again, just being able to have Mjolnir recreated in game, that was insane. And because Lycanite is a lot more dedicated to doing a lot of updates that are kind of on the edge of new, with the newest versions of Forge. That means that we'll at least have some way of having Mjolnir in game for pretty much the foreseeable future. I've had superhero mods go in and out, and some of them had Thor's hammer, but this just feels right, and it is pretty functional, and the fact that it's within Lycanite's mobs, where you also get to experience a lot of other things too, is just awesome. Like, just think of all like the crazy pets and summoning and all that stuff combined. It really is a wild, awesome mod, and he has some insane plans for it later that I'm not saying now because you might not even believe it. So, and this is with the fact that we have this crazy equipment system here. Like, I know that some of the next steps will be uh, shields and armor, but that's not even the thing I'm thinking is crazy. So just ponder that. For now, I'll be logging off. Hope to hear from you all later, and bye for now, everybody.